Howdy shipmates, it's Captain Dan here. Welcome to Story Time with Captain Dan. Here I'm telling tales new and old while we stay together, stay apart in this time of social distancing during the coronavirus. So I'm telling tales for us to share together, bring a little bit of joy, I suppose, in these challenging times when we can't be out and about as much as we'd like to be. Certainly I can't. Any requests are gratefully received. Any comments, any people you'd like me to mention, happy to call out to you. Any encouragement, please come and let me know. Today's story is a classic old tale. It's a longer one than usual, and it's from that great writer Oscar Wilde. And it's a story been requested by a few people, this actually, of the selfish giant. And I'm using a copy here that was dedicated to Sue's son Barney, Christmas 2009. It reads, I'll show you, look, there's the dedication. To a beautiful storyteller, a beautiful story. Love to Barney from Mum and Dad. So this is for Barney. Oscar Wilde, The Selfish Giant, illustrated by Michael Foreman and Freya Wright. There you have it. So every afternoon as they were coming from school, the children used to go play in the giant's garden. Whoa, look at that. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars, and there were 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke out into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. "How happy we are!" they cried to each other. One day the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend the Cornish ogre and had stayed with him for 7 years. After the 7 years were over, he had said that's all that he had to say, for his conversation was rather limited, and he determined to return to his own castle. And when he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. You can see them. "My own garden is my own garden," said the giant. "Anyone can understand that, and I will allow nobody to play in it but myself." So he built a high wall all around it and put up a notice board saying, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." Why do people always want to build walls around things? He was a very selfish giant. Look at the wall. The poor children had nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander round the high walls when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. "How happy we were," they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant was it still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it, and there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower put its head out from the grass, but when it saw the notice board it was so sorry for the children that it slipped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. There you can see them. "Spring had forgotten the garden," they cried, "so we will live here all the year round." The snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them, and he came. He was wrapped in furs and he roared all day about the garden and blew the chimney pots down. "This is a delightful spot," he said. "We must ask the hall on a visit." So the hail on a visit, sorry. So the hail came. Every day for 3 hours he rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke out all of the slates, and then he ran round and round the garden as fast as he could. He was dressed in grey and his breath was like ice. He was cold as ice. "I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming," said the selfish giant, as he sat at the window and looked out at his cold, white garden. "I hope there will be a change in the weather." But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but the giant's garden she gave none. "He is too selfish," she said. So it was always winter there, and the north wind and the hail and the frost and the snow danced through the trees. One morning the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musicians passing by. It was really only a little linnet singing outside his window, but it was so long since he had heard a bird sing in this garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. And there you can see the giant and the little linnet bird singing at his window. The most beautiful music in the world. Then the hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. "I believe the spring has come at last," said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. What did he see? It was the most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. In every tree he could see there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms, and they were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. You can see that lovely picture there. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass, and the flowers were laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all around, crying bitterly. You can just see him there in the corner. The poor tree was still covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. "Climb up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could. But the boy was too tiny. And the giant's heart melted as he looked out. "How selfish I have been," he said. "Now I know why the spring would not come here. I will put the poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground for ever and ever." He was really sorry for what he had done. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quietly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his hand and put him in the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossom, and the birds came and sang on it, and the little boy stretched out his 2 arms and flung them round the giant's neck, and he kissed him. And the other children, when they saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back, and with them came the spring. "It is your garden now, little children," said the giant, and he took a great axe and he knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. "But where is your companion?" he said, "the boy I put into the tree?" The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. "We don't know," said the children. "He has gone away." "You must tell him to be sure to come tomorrow," said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived, and they had never seen him before. And the poor giant felt very, very sad. Every afternoon when school was over, the children came and played with the giant, but the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his first little friend and often spoke of him. "How I would like to see him," he would often say. Years went over, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about any more, so he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired their beautiful garden. "I have many beautiful flowers," he said, "but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all." One winter morning, he looked out of his window just as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly, he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked. Look what he saw. He looked and he looked. It certainly was a marvellous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were golden, and the silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy that he had loved. And there you can see the little boy in the tree. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy, and out into the garden he hastened across the grass. He came near to the child, and when he came quite close his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who have dared to wound thee?" From the palms of the child's hands were the prints of 2 nails, and the prints of 2 nails were on the little feet. "Who hath dared to wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me that I may take my big sword and slay him." "Nay," answered the child, "but these are the wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant, and a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered in white blossom. So a beautiful, beautiful tale, The Selfish Giant by Oscar Wilde, illustrated by Michael Foreman and Freya Wright. That was especially for Barney Saunders, Sue's son. A great storyteller. A great story, but a great storyteller. And I hope you enjoyed that story. But that's the end of story time with Captain Dan for today. I hope you enjoyed your time together. Again, please send in any requests, any shout outs, any greetings you want. We're here to help. We're in this one together, children and mums and dads and everybody else. We're all in this one together. So let's cheer one another up with these great tales. But that's it for today. I bid you a fond farewell. And I say goodbye with my usual words of blessing, I suppose you could call them, from an old sea dog like me. So, you know it by now. Good night. Good night. Oh, sweet repairs. Don't lie on your belly, 'cause you might squash your nose.